tech issue here. So I got to start over. Thanks for being here. This is Dr. Chip Larson, professor, older brother of the Beast here. And we're kind of picking up from last week. Just kind of change the intro a little bit here and get some techie things going on. We kind of introduced PTSD and Dr. Chip. I'll call him Chip. He's my brother. I'm allowed.
You are, yes.
And it was, the topic was called looking in the mirror. And I expressed some things that I would see looking in the mirror. You know, a whole lot of different things, the good, the bad from my career in law enforcement and the military. And then I kind of asked him, as a brother, what would you think? As a professional, you know, that's has a background in psychology and counseling and developing and as well as teaching, what would you think? And we got some answers. So we had a great podcast. We talked about a lot of things. And he concluded that the last question I asked him was, now that you talked about 2 months to me about things going on and realizing what I'm saying, do you think I'm making good steps? And he said, yes. Well, to kind of bring people into what we're talking about and the steps we're talking about, tonight he's going to do most of the talking instead of me. And we named this podcast, he named this podcast, in the outline, noticing, naming, and navigating. And this is critical. You know, I said it took me a long time. I'm 58. It took me till I was 56 to admit I had PTSD issues. And I'm just learning that it has physical problems. It's not just mental and emotional. And I'll explain what I mean by physical a little bit later, you know, through myself, through a close friend of mine, what he's going through. But I'm going to let Chip get on, you know, get into this a little bit more. But it's important to understand and know it. People that drink a whole lot can know they're addicted, they're an alcoholic, or they can deny it. But they know the definition of an alcoholic. That's somebody who consumes a whole lot. A drug addict takes a lot of drugs. But PTSD needs to be defined. Would you not agree? And
Yes.
that's what he's here for. Go ahead. I'm going to work on some tech here for a second and kind of let you jump in a little bit with some PTSD definitions and kind of layman's terms a little bit. What would my neighbors look for? What would I look for in my neighbors if we were out talking, looking under the hood of their car?
Well, thanks, Steve. I think when we start to think about PTSD, and PTSD is, there's clearly a definition for it, but that definition just involves a psychiatric diagnosis where you meet certain criteria, and so in that way, it's not something that I guess that I would say that I would go around looking for. And I think that that's part of when we look at some of the ways that we would begin to recognize things, and clinically is what would be called a differential diagnosis. And so there's a lot of things that could be associated with PTSD. A lot of those symptoms, whether they're cognitive, memory related, sleep related, pain related. So there's a number of things that might also be associated with CTE, and that was part of the conversation that we were having. And so it's hard to know which of your symptoms, Steve, that you've described are specific to PTSD versus CTE. And then if we're to look at a lot of those same symptoms, there's a number of other mental health diagnoses that might go with it that would have components of maybe depression or anxiety disorders, just for a couple. And so that's one of the challenges I think that we would all have personally and then also professionally, especially if we're not in a profession that is qualified to diagnose. And so that would be me. I'm not qualified to actually diagnose. I'm an educator, so I can say that these symptoms represent, they look a lot like this or they look a lot like this, and because I'm not qualified to diagnose, I don't have certain specific diagnostic tools, such as brain imaging. I don't have that at my fingertips. And so minus the tools and minus the credentials to actually diagnose, my approach then is to treat everybody with a similar mindset. And that is with a sense of curiosity. And that sense of curiosity could be explained by different diagnoses. But here's some that are maybe specific to things that people would have that would happen that are part of trauma responses. Um, some of there's we talked a little bit last time about the fight or flight response, and when you've been traumatized, there are certain things that will activate that fight or flight response, even though there may not be an actual real threat. And so that's part of where the traumatic experience and those memories and the way that the brain responds to that in terms of helping us survive. And so that's what our fight or flight response is wired just for. It's for survival. It's not for really functional day-to-day productivity. It's for survival. And when that survival response becomes dominant and it works its way into our daily life, it's disruptive. And so we might have some things that trigger us that may contribute to panic attacks or other emotional responses that can be paralyzing. Um, there's some of the behavioral responses then that people might implement to try to cope. There's ways of coping. Some are healthy ways, some are not healthy ways. But sometimes the unhealthy ways are also effective, at least in the short term. And so some of the things that people might do is they might just detach themselves from situations and avoid emotions or avoid intimacy with people. Sometimes they might engage in work, and this is one of the things from knowing you as my brother, and also from having friends in law enforcement, and friends in the military. I know my own response is that the more stressed I get, the harder I work, and I've never really thought about it in terms of that's a way of avoiding the stress. I've always just thought about it in terms of, well, I have another gear, and if there's a problem and there's a stressor, I have another gear and I can go there. And other people just don't understand because they don't have that gear. So that's part of how I've rationalized it in my mind.
Yeah.
And
I thought I
because
thought
they're
all my extra work was for the money. I didn't realize,
right,
honestly, I didn't
yeah,
realize it could be keeping myself on the job in uniform
hmm
as opposed to going home. And I didn't take work home. I didn't come home. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't like on TV, boozing it up and yelling, screaming, fighting with the wife and the kids. It wasn't
right,
like that. It was a very great home life. I was an expert at turning it off. And I think I became too good at turning it off.
mhm,
You do have. I'm gonna throw a definition out since you provided all these great documents for us. Um, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is caused by exposure to psychological trauma. While CTE, and we're going to talk a little bit about this because doctors are diagnosing me with both PTSD and symptoms similar to the brain damage of CTE. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I've practiced all week to say that encephalopathy
that's good.
results from repetitive brain trauma. PTSD may improve with treatment and is diagnosed basally on DSM-5 criteria. He'll have to explain that. I've never seen it. Whereas CTE is progressive and currently only confirmed post-mortem. That's why I said symptoms similar to the diagnosis of that. I know this week they just said the first female has been diagnosed with symptoms related to the brain damage of CTE. Well, this is important. So talking about recognizing this, and I'll use my neighbor across the street. He's got a hot rod Mustang. So if you what you just said, people put themselves in their work, they put themselves or they shy away socially, some different things. I know he works Monday to Friday, and every Saturday morning and Sunday morning, he's got his old Mustang with the hot rod that everybody up down the street can hear. He's doing that as a hobby, but he's got a wife and the kids. Is that his stress reliever from something? So I'm not saying he's got PTSD. We've talked about some things. He had a surgery where he did go to a place and ended up with addiction and ended up buying oxy on the street. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Hey, what am I doing?" And he was able to take control and stop that. That was before he got married. So I have seen some stressor symptoms in him, but like you're saying, if you kind of have understand definitions, it's easier to see this in friends and family and coworker. It's easier to see this to the ones closest to you. You see a change in them when they come home. And now I'm going to tell you why I'm sitting here in the bedroom for two reasons. Number one, because my daughter's here and puppies and animals and there's everything going on. But most importantly, the reason, and I say this to people, if you only get dressed once a week out of 7 days, 1 day a week, and get out somewhere because of depression or a mental health issue, we're still proud of you for getting dressed that 1 day, because that's the day that you realized I'm going to give it the best I can. And you got up and you did it. So I'm sitting in my bedroom. I was busy. I was out today, but there's days I don't want to go anywhere. I'll explain that. Anxiety and some depression are really coming out right now. And this is where, as he's going to explain a little bit more about CTE, and I've got some great things. And I said, I've never read it anywhere where you see PTSD and CTE put together so well like this. And he said, that's because I did it for you that way. I thought you caught and pasted something.
Nobody asked that question because these are both very distinct diagnoses, and to have characteristic symptoms of both is, well, it's certainly possible. You know, but it's not
My
normal.
my
It's not usual.
my
Normal is relative, right? But it's
well,
not it's not usual.
so here's my brief conversation with the brain doctor who's going to do my neck fusion next week. I explained things to him. And after all these tests, and he decided from the other guy that's going to partner with him that I'm not leaking spinal fluid. He said, well, we're going to fuse this C3-4 and then C4-5, little incision, go through, do this stuff. I watched a little video, learned about it. And I've had spine fusion, so it's not my first one. I'm not. He said, after we do this, and Dr. Meyer and I, we're going to have to sit down and deal with this PTSD and CTE that you've got. He said, and he asked me 3 months ago, 4 months ago, how many times you think you've been knocked out? Because he said, you've got symptoms that are either you're leaking spinal fluid or you've got concussion syndrome problems, which is similar to CTE, but I can't say that because you're alive. So
Right.
over a couple of visits, and I get in there and I said, well, this guy a couple times and this, and I'm training with this special forces guy in the police department, and then this and this and that. And he said, would you say over 10? I said, oh yeah. Over 20? Yep. Over 50? Yep. He said, we'll stop at that. He said, you've had too much brain trauma, which explains why I have psychoactive response when they keep giving me migraine medicine. They gave me I can't think, it starts with an S. They gave me a pill, and it falls into this sentence here. PTSD often includes emotional numbness and hypervigilance, while CTE is more associated with impulsivity and paranoia. So I take this pill. I take this pill for a day, and it gets really weird. And I'm getting really weird. I'm getting really anxiety and nervous. And I don't take medicine, and it's not normal. The next day, I take the pill in the morning, and about an hour later, I drive down to Richwood, about 15-minute drive, snappy pizza on my way back. I start going to sweat and a panic attack. By the time I get home, I want to get some guns, get my war bag, which is a bag of survival stuff, and my family, and go hide in the corner. That's what that pill did to me. And I'm the wrong person to have guns and go hide in the corner. That's a bad day if I'm doing that. But emotional numbness and hypervigilance, I got survival gear kind of stashed around the house. Now I'm not one of those underground bunkers. I'm not to that point yet as a survivalist, but I do have weapons all around and around vehicles and everything. Is that impulsivity and paranoia? It's at least paranoia. And I'm hyper vigilant to everything. So my symptoms kind of go both ways. Would you think?
I would say definitely yes. And I think one of the challenges that presents for you is that the very nature of your work, for the last 30 years and in your current work, is to engage in the very things that are triggering. And so that's a tough one. Well, in one sense, your professional outlet is also a personal stressor. And it's so, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not working right now. I'm
And
working
that's
right
what you
now, but I'm
think is
staying
that, and that's what you do for fun. I mean, so not
out
everybody,
of
some
trouble.
people.
So I'm
Yeah,
interjecting these points I've
yeah.
highlighted that you
Mhm.
wrote and provided for me, because it becomes, when we get to the words behavior, emotional, motor skills, cognitive, and stuff, and then relate to you what my doctor records look like. And basically, the doctor said your brain's been scrambled. He said you definitely have signs of PTSD. And here's the part I want to say something really quick. I didn't know, and I read this in December. I had a scan MRI of my brain. It said the durameter was thickening. So I looked this up this morning, and PTSD does not cause that, but it causes three other physical responses, which I didn't get a chance to write down. But like the frontal cortex can change, but these three areas, one of them's a little almond shaped word. I can't even pronounce it. These words will come to me here. It might be written down, but they all affect
The
the mood.
amygdala,
Hmm?
the amygdala.
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, that's the first one that came up that I
Okay,
couldn't pronounce, and I looked at the
yeah,
definition. And I was like, skip it. I'll just throw it out there, and you'll say it the right way.
yeah.
And then there's another one. I think it starts with an H. It's
The
about 10 letters long.
hypothalamus. Yeah, the hypothalamus.
Yep, that's the other word. And then frontal cortex is the third one. See, we got all three of them just
Right,
like that.
right. There you have it.
So the definition and how those expand and they affect physical changes. My buddy Will did 3 tours in the Marines in Iraq and had some very traumatic things, incident, the mines, the normal stuff, something very specific that I can't say publicly, but it was traumatizing enough that he called me one night, and he had a gun in his hand and alcohol, and he is disabled PTSD from the military, and he told me that he goes and he gets a scan and gets measured in January, but he's got a depression in his durameter where mine is enhanced, and that's the protective layer around the brain under the skull. And in that indention, he's got something like 15% of growth of frontal cortex or something that's abnormal. And they're measuring again to see the different change. And it's only allowed to grow certain. So I didn't know PTSD caused physical problems in the brain. And it does. And it kind of scares me. I was working on my third book 3 years ago and had to stop because all of a sudden emotionally I couldn't handle what I was thinking and writing and reliving. And 4 chapters into my fifth chapter, and this wasn't even the part yet about Sean and her nerve disease and some family things. I talked about the situation down at the prison and um, inmates trying to kill me. One thing didn't really bother me. Didn't bother me that the things that happened, I was undercover. Didn't bother me that I resigned and became homeless for a whole summer. That didn't bother me. That was like, I'll get through this. It was okay. And I got through it and relocated, different job, different everything, and life went on. That part didn't bother me. But there were things thinking back, there were triggers back then that I was missing. And let me find the next line here. It probably talks about, yeah, right here. The next part that you wrote that both disorders and share symptoms like irritability, aggression, depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. I've never been suicidal. That's the one thing that I've never been. I've been in a lot of violence, but I've never been suicidal. Irritability, my irritability has really grown over the last 5 or 6 years, I would say, maybe even longer. But the irritability also becomes sensitivity to light and to sound, certain sounds, um, watching TV here. And, we watch a lot of police shows and, then the hospital, the fire shows. And when they go and tell the family member that somebody didn't make it and they scream, that type of sound, that high pitched sound makes me jump because I've made death notifications many, many times. Loud airplanes, loud TV, loud radio in a car from my children drive me nuts. It goes right through me. I have tinnitus really bad, and I had hearing aids 6 years ago, and I haven't worn them for 3 years because I can't stand them in my ears to touching me, and I can't stand the sound. Haven't worn my glasses, my progressive lens trifocal, bifocal, eight focal, whatever they are, in 3 years because I can't stand them on my face. So physically, I have irritability, but I'm also irritable about stupid people and stupid things they do. So it's difficult to go to the grocery store because a lot of people do dumb things and irritate me. Um, Depression, like I said, anxiety is noticeably coming out. The shot, a Jovi. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a new shot for migraines. I did it last Friday, so it's been 5 days now. It's my second month. It's a monthly shot. Oh boy, I got vision changes from that. Like it said, when I'm in the car driving or riding with my son, I'll keep looking over and I feel like we're going 80 and we're going 35. I visually see things speed up and slow down while I'm looking at the same thing. And that's not good. That's not safe. It has enhanced my migraines. It has enhanced, I've been on 5 migraine pills that have all made me hallucinate. Psychoactive result every single time. So the pill I told you about that coming home from the pizza place, by the time I got home and the wife was there and her mom was there and I'm sitting on her shaking, I put the pizza down, I'm on the couch and I'm just shaking and pale and sweating. And she called the pharmacist and it was the old guy and he's like, don't hide that. Don't let him take any more. I've never heard anybody have this reaction, but keep that away from him. Now I do the shot and I just messaged him yesterday. Got to stop it. I can't take it. My heart's racing. I'm trying to catch my breath. It's like skipping beats. I'm having all the bad breathing and heart and psychoactive things again. And here I get this hallucinating, seeing things that aren't there or not proper. My anxiety. Came home yesterday from a doctor with her and going to make some pancakes and eggs at 1:30. Have that's what I planned for lunch. Had to sit in a chair and almost fell out of the chair. And also, I noticed when I leaned forward, I was like I wasn't trying to do it. I was just like I was going to faint. My jaw got numb and it started shaking. Like it was my jaw was just like shaking like a seizure. Nothing else was. And then it kind of catch me and I'd sit up and put my head up straight and then it didn't do that anymore. And that was kind of bizarre to happen. So it's medicine I can't take. But the short term, long term memory, PTSD affects the memory, often trauma related and concentration, which I have both short term concentration issues. CTE includes progressive short term memory loss. Executive dysfunction can lead to dementia in later stages. I get really confused, and I've texted you and I've talked to you about this. She has to, if I go to the store, she has to text me what I need. And if there's 5 things on the message, and then she sends me a sixth one later, I get anxiety and I panic because it wasn't in the original message. It's like now I have two shopping lists I have to complete now. Even if it just says and milk, it just throws me off and I just go crazy. And I'm riding around in a buggy because I can't walk but a short distance with these screws in my back without the pain causing anxiety. So concentration issues. Both these brain doctors are writing. Pleasant is a patient 50-year-old male with cognitive impairment. He has confusion. He's got problems explaining what's going on. And that's what they're putting in my notes. And they've both seen me because I go through spells and episodes. I texted you yesterday and I said I had a really bad day. And it took me until probably 8 o'clock last night before everything just settled down in my head. And I don't know. I'll let you comment. I've been talking a little bit about these definitions and the emotional part. I didn't say that. That's the next line, but this emotional thing. I have outbursts, and that started 5 or 6 years ago watching TV, and all of a sudden I could just start crying over nothing. It could be a commercial. It could be another. You watch TV late at night, and they show all them social security ads and then 10 different medication commercials. I wrote it down one night. I had 12 different commercials of medicine in a 45-minute show. And it kind of made me mad. And then just tears started running down my face. I couldn't control my emotion. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think I guess one of the things that I would say is that we talked last time, and this would go along with how do you talk to somebody that you care about that has PTSD or any kind of issue, but especially something that would be kind of categorized as psychological, something that has to do with memory or cognitive function, things like that, because we can't see it. It's going on in your brain, and like you said, without imaging, we can't see it. And with CTE, it can't be diagnosed until they can do an autopsy after you've passed. And so there's a lot of things that goes on in the brain that that helps us, if we knew it, would help us better understand behavior. And I think that the analogy that I always use would be is that the brain is part of your body. And if you were at work, or your kid fell down, and or somebody in a PE class, they came to class with a cast on their leg because they broke their tibia, then the teacher is not going to say, hey, well, what we're doing next is we're going to get everybody's getting on the line. Today's track and field day, and we're going to get everybody on the line. You don't get any breaks or excuses because you got a cast on. And so get on the starting line, and then when they run slow, then we yell at them on the other end and tell them all the things that they should have done better. Well, if somebody's got a physical problem like that, we're a lot more compassionate. But we don't sometimes understand the brain is part of the body. It's a lot more important actually than the tibia. And when you've been knocked out 50 times, and I know that 20 years ago, the thinking about concussions was a lot different. There's this thing going on in the NFL now where they've made rulings that the team can't give players smelling salts, and they can't use them on the sidelines. And that was the treatment for a concussion in the 1980s and the 1990s, up to 1990s and before. And the treatment for a concussion was smelling salts.
Mhm.
I've not been knocked out 50 times, but I've been knocked out, not even in double digits, maybe 7 or 8 times. I got knocked out 3 times in one football game, and that was all. They brought over the smelling salts, and so that mindset of
Mhm.
our generation that we grew up with, that was just the mindset. I mean, you're alive, your heart's still beating, and you can take a step. And if you can, you got a job to do. But we couldn't see the damage. We couldn't see the trauma going on to the brain. If that kind of trauma had been administered to an arm or a leg, or something that could be seen, no coach, no parent, no athletic trainer would ever put an athlete back on the field. They would not send you back to work, as a law enforcement officer, if you couldn't do the job. And that's one of the biggest, I think, challenges with it, is just recognizing that the brain's part of the body. And when your leg's disrupted, you walk with a limp. Well, imagine the part of your brain that has to do with emotions walking with a limp. Imagine the part of the brain that regulates the fight or flight response, walking with a limp. Imagine the part of your brain, your higher brain center, your cortex. Imagine that part of your brain that helps you remember things and helps you make decisions, the executive function part of it. Imagine that part of your brain walking with a limp. And if you could imagine a cast and a three-dimensional limp on your brain, now you've got these parts that usually they don't work independent of each other. They work together. So not only are they disrupted independently, but they're disrupted as they work together. And so your emotions then sometimes override your practical thinking. And then sometimes your thinking can get over focused on things and stimulate an anxiety response. And so not only is your brain limping wrong when you've had brain traumas, is that the parts are also disrupted, individually and as they work together. And so that's why I say whenever I'm working with somebody, and PTSD it's more, um, it's challenging because it's not so obvious, because I mean here's, I guess, something that I would suggest to you about the PTSD, and you talk about things were okay. What I would say is that your ability to cope intellectually was superior. But that did not mean that the trauma hadn't taken its effect
Yeah.
on your emotional system, on your cognitive system. But sometimes when we've experienced that, we have ways, especially if you've got a lot of skills at this, like you do, you have the ability to deny that something happened, or to deny that something was that bad. And these kind of cognitive responses actually help you maintain a high level of performance, while on a different level you have more time to begin to process and deal with the emotional aspects of it. And sometimes when you get to that point, you find out that there's a lot more to deal with than just having a couple of bad days. You find out that that
Yeah.
trauma really has taken an effect, and that you have, in sticking with the bone example, you have an untreated fracture in the limbic system, and that untreated fracture, you've been protecting it with your intellect. But when your intellect and circumstances allow, you find out that part that's been damaged. And so then then it's something that you have to begin to address, you know, for its own sake. And so that's to me the something I always try to keep in mind with people. And when I think for the simplest kind of explanation, I think about the brain, and well, I don't think about it. It's called the triune brain. I didn't come up with this. McLean's triune brain, and it basically goes like the primal part of your brain stem, the hypothalamus, is part of the limbic system. That's your emotional centers, and then the cortex. That's your higher brain centers. And so McLean described the triune brain like this, and that at the most fundamental level, the question is of survival. Am I safe? And that's the priority. And then the next most important question, as we kind of shift gears up to the limbic system, is that I am I accepted? Am I loved? And then we get to the higher brain centers, and that's where the executive function is, and we start to process things, and we make decisions, and now that helps us function day to day. But my approach then in working, whether it was in with students now, whether it's with working with CEOs of a company, or working with psychiatric patients in the old days, I always started with that triune brain in mind. And because my rationale is, as an absent-minded professor, I don't have to remember grocery lists. And so Susan knows she should just send me a text to start with, because I'm not even going to try to remember. I've got big things on my mind. That's me rationalizing things, maybe. Yeah, I've got big things. I don't have time for lists. Send to me a list, right? And so, but because I don't, that to me, that frees me up to actually pay attention to what's going on. And so the first thing I would start with is just kind of to try to help answer that question: am I safe? And so we hear in some ways, and this is, well, conceptually, it's creating a safe space, right? And so that's a term that's been kind of weaponized in a way to make fun of people or something like that. But anybody that's been traumatized, if we think about that, the safe space is directly related to trauma, whatever the cause of it was. And so what you don't want somebody who's who's been traumatized, you don't want them in an emotional state. You want them in a safe place. And so we create that by how we interact, and how we accept people for how they are, and for what recognizing what's going on, and expressing concern. And so if we kind of set that stage, and we create that safe place in terms of our interaction, then we can start to shift gears a little bit. And then we could ask a question and say, I see some things going on here, and is everything okay? I just wanted to check in with you and see if everything's okay. Hope you're doing well. Want you to know that you have our support. That sort of thing. It's where there's no judgment, and there's no agenda. It's just an invitation, for discussion, and it's done in a way that is non-threatening, that kind of lowers the defenses. Um, then I think, then from it's shifting gears, then so now we've got, okay, there's no threat. Survival is not what's at stake now. There's no threat. I'm safe. And then we shift up to the next part: is that is am I accepted? Do my situations, do they scare people? Do they, cause people to run away from me or to move away from me? And when people are dealing with hard things, it's hard. It's hard not only for people, but it's hard for the people around them. And so the challenge then is, if we're going to be supportive, is to be there, and to not think we need to fix everything, but to just be there, to be present, and to be a collaborator or a partner in the process. Um, and I think that's then you're like, well, I'm accepted. I'm somebody, not trying to tell anybody how to do something. I'm seeing what they need from me. I'm asking how can I help, uh, and treating them like a human being. And then when we've got that box checked, then there's no threat. I'm safe. Then I'm accepted. I'm loved. I'm appreciated. People see how I am and what I'm doing. They recognize my challenges, but they also see all the good stuff. And then now we're shifting gears up to where we can have kind of a more intellectual conversation, where we can have a collaborative discussion, where we can share information and receive information, uh, knowing that it's really just about helping things improve, helping things get better, helping each other cope with things. And the investment that we make, the investment that we make in others, so we sometimes we get stuck in like a banking system, right? Like this transactional thing. Like if I have to go to the store and I give them, 3 boxes for an undersized box of Cheerios. Well, I gave them the money, they gave me Cheerios, and we went back. And so a lot of times we think about human behavior, mistakenly, is this it's transactional, and it's not. Our relationships are an investment. They're an investment in somebody else, but they're also an investment in ourselves. It's an investment for us being how the kind of person we want to be. It's an investment in somebody else to help them be the kind of person they want to be. And there's this, if we were to look at some of the literature in the area, there was also something on an unconscious level that says, if I help you now, then you might help me when I need help sometime. Well, that's
Mhm.
really kind of describes the human condition. When we look at it, and I'm obviously most familiar with what happens in the United States, but when we have traumatic events, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado in the Midwest, we have a lot of those, is the way that people rally around to help each other out. When we're in that kind of a survival mode, when we want people to know that they're appreciated, and the way that we respond in a crisis is unparalleled. Uh, and so whatever people want to say about the United States, that's the same wherever you go. It's the same on the East Coast, the West Coast, in the Midwest, the North, and the South. When the shit hits the fan, people show up to help out, and we help each other out. Um, and that's yeah, I think that sometimes gets missed because we tend to just focus on the things that didn't go right. But if we can shift gears and we can collaborate and we can engage with people, then uh, you know they know that they're noticed. And then part of that process then, as we talk about things, or you're talking about whatever's going on, and sharing stories, and discussing things, is to recognize that uh, the symptoms you're describing are normal. They're normal for PTSD. The symptoms you're describing are normal for CTE. They're also normal. There's characteristics of depression. There's characteristics of anxiety. There's sometimes just plain old absent-mindedness that has no other explanation needed other than you got 10 things on your mind. And you know what? I'm not going to fuss about you needing a grocery list.
Yeah.
Because I get 10 things on my mind. I don't try to remember. And so you're the difference. Well, you're trying to remember, and you're doing it after 50 concussions. If I could help out, I would alleviate the pressure on you by saying, I got big things on my mind. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to remember. Send me a dang list. And
My
see,
last
that'll help reduce your stress.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a
no.
free tip.
Free tip. My last visit after the neurologist, I went back to the brain doctor, with Mayfield Brain and Spine. He's a PhD doctor. All his friends he sent me to for the last 8 months are. I've seen 5 different PhD doctors, and they all working and saying the same thing. He said, "Okay, I'm gonna schedule the surgery." And I was talking really fast, and he said, "Do you always talk this fast?" And I said, "No." I said, "I feel like I'm childlike, and everything is like giddy and funny, and I'm just going really, really fast, like out of control speaking." The time before that, when I was in there, I couldn't formulate and make a whole paragraph hardly to answer his questions, and he would repeat stuff to me, and I'd look and I'd talk really slow, and he said, "Ask me, do I understand?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm thinking how to answer. I'm trying to remember." And he's looking at me, and I've seen him 5 or 6 times. I tell him different things each time, so he knows my background and the things. And I've seen him on a good day where I wasn't going extra fast or extra slow. And I said, "Look, this is a good day. It's a good moment, a good hour. I've done these things in my life, with some accomplishments. I've written books. I've done things in podcaster and influencer, and a lot of teaching and law enforcement, a lot of things in the professional community." And then he's seen me, and I tell him, "I'm lucky to get my socks and shoes on today and get to the doctor." And I know where it is just because I was taught by my dad how to read a map, and you go someplace once and you never forget it. I said, "So I'm on autopilot, and my car's on autopilot. So I got here, and my clock told me it went off and told me to get here on time." I said, "And it took all of that to get me here. It wasn't just a fun drive, like we're going to go to the doctor and go to eat and go to the mall or anything. It was all these auto programs of a car and a brain that got me here. And I'm talking to you real slow." And he's seen me go both ways. And that's why he's telling me, "You've got these things that are happening." And he asked a few other things. I told you I was going to tell you a little story. We're watching Chicago Fire the other night. And um, you remember in high school, my best friend was Kevin. And he had a brother, Keith, that was your age, 2 years older. He wasn't a football player. You guys were different circles, but you knew of his name and knew of him. Um, about a year after we graduated high school, Kevin got involved in drug stuff, had a roommate in an apartment. He came home one day and found the DEA and FBI at his apartment, tossing the place, everything, roommate in handcuffs. So he ran and snuck and ended up at home, had dinner with his mom. And when she went to the shower, his dad, had passed. He went down in the laundry room and hung himself. And we're watching Chicago Fire, and the parents said, "Oh, our son's suicidal, and he's in the room, and the door's locked. We don't know." And the fire chief's like, "Oh, okay, we can't wait for the police hit it." So they hit the door, and it was just, how these new phones are. I got an iPhone 15 Pro. It really focuses in on the image of me, when I'm recording or you're taking pictures or video, but it makes you stand out almost 3D. That's why the top of your phone says 3D when you're doing it. But this image on the TV was like 3D of this person, and it's just TV. He was there, he was hanging, and he was dead. And I about jumped off the couch and just, like, if I had feathers, they would all stood up. In 2019 at the prison, my last year at the prison, the inmates got this idea. Inmates doing life, like multiple life sentences, never going to get out. They come up with really dumb ideas, like hunger strikes. That's not going to get you anywhere. Well, they came up with this idea to draw attention to something they were trying to accomplish as a gang, as a unit, statewide, that they were going to begin these suicides. And in the first 3 months of 2019, I was involved personally with pulling down 8 inmates and saving their life that were trying to hang themselves. 2 of them tried to stab me. Of the 8, 2 of the 8 tried to stab me. I can't tell you how many beyond those 3 months, probably about 20 that I've seen try in the prison. A couple of them I've seen succeeded, and it's not that hard. Then you don't have to have a big rope and big pole or anything. You can do it in a little cell off a bed, off a bunk bed. As a police officer, I've seen it. Mostly they were handguns and knife suicides as a police, but I've seen people hanging. But it was just I just out of nowhere, it just caught me, and I had to get up and leave the room. Come back in a minute when it was like commercial, and it's taken me all these years. You're talking about as a police, when you go to a scene and you see something, your brain has this checklist, and it's a notebook. What time is it? Daytime. First on scene. Who's on scene? Who's going to do the command? Who's going to be in control? Who are you notifying? Detectives coming out. You're making a list of names, dates, all kinds of stuff, evidence, taking pictures, drawing a sketch. You go through a process that it's not emotional. It is all intellectual. So, and that's kind of it. And here's this other word, and I've waited, and I guess right now is the right time to throw this one word out: stigma. The stigma in men is you're supposed to take care of your family and take care of things and work. And when I was began teaching self-defense to police officers, and I only taught to police, to law enforcement community, except for one class, and that was about 4 years ago. But in teaching the police this, I put the padded suit on and train them. Hit me harder. You don't hit me hard enough. I've got to show you that you can take a punch. You can take this. You can get knocked down. You can get hit. I can get hit. We both get back up. You build this mental and physical toughness, and you have to build toughness. You have to build a toughness, and I think that came with a price nobody knew about. I think that was a costly price, because now we're having discussions about why I'm having many, many, many concussions. I just got a message. Are my car windows up? Yes, because the rain. I knew it was going to rain. But it's this stigma. You don't give in. You don't admit to anything. Do you need a counselor? I don't need a counselor. And I don't know if you remember this story. We neither of us had any kids yet. We were. I think I was just married. Actually, it was got married February 18th. I remember this now. And it was right at Valentine's Day, or right after Valentine's Day, and you'd come in for the wedding, and we went and had pizza. We went and had lunch. The call that I had before that was I pulled a woman out of the river that had been floating all winter for 3 months under a barge. So I pull her out. The coroner's going like this, trying to find a hole to find her teeth and see if she's got real teeth and real eyeballs. So I'm going through this for hours. And then I get in the car and I go drive and have lunch with you guys and have pizza like it didn't even happen. And that was back in 1995. I've been in police for 3 years and had been in the military 4 years before that. I don't know if you remember that day, but she looked at me like, and I told her later, like, how do you go? You just do. I'm hungry. I got to get to a shift. You got to eat. You don't let things you see bother you. And this thing, and I can't do push-ups now right now with my spine. I haven't even tried them. I haven't done a push-up in almost 2 years. And the 22 push-ups a day, talking about the 22 servicemen, veterans that commit suicide every day. A lot of them don't talk. A lot of them won't share. They won't say anything, and it's because of this stigma. There's another guy that's written a book. He's a retired police officer. He was involved in a police shooting, and he talks about breaking the stigma, and he uses that word all the time. I don't use the word. I just wanted to bring this out only because you're here. But instead of using the word stigma, and when I first started doing this podcast, Painting for PTSD, back, the end of last year, I'd tell people, hey, I'm at home and doing this. And I wasn't saying, I'm going to beat the stigma now and we're going to talk about this. I didn't do that. I said, I just having a little trouble and I want to talk. I would just say it's trouble and I want to talk, or I'm feeling something, or I'm thinking something, or I saw something and I want to talk. Something's bothering me. I have triggers. And I kind of just used a whole bunch of words and stayed away from that word on purpose. But that is. When I remember I was in the band when you were in high school and in your senior year, and I remember there was a football game, and I think you tackled somebody really hard, and they had to call the game because the dude didn't get up. It happens in the NFL frequently. And didn't know anything about it. Didn't know anything about concussion. Like, oh, he got his bell rung, and that was it. That's all we thought about. He got his bell rung. Good job, Chip. Good job. This, good job, so and so. And you know what I mean? It was just a good job, and let's get back to it. Let's get back to it. A lot of times, people in companies, and oop, I lost you. Let me see here. I'll jump back on here in a second. Are you still there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just can't see you.
I'm frozen on your screen, aren't I?
It just went black. I don't even see you.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So the video is out. I can hear you.
Well, we'll fix that in a minute. But yeah, I'm still here though. Um,
But I think, companies and business wise, and here's the thing about football, there's a lot of money invested in an athlete that's played 3, 4, 5 years, that's been through college, that's on the pro level. There's a huge financial investment that that player cannot stop. And there's a point that we need to look at the human life as valued over money. The same thing goes in the military as a soldier. They're trained, they go through things. I've had guys that have been guests on here, Wesley and I can't think of names right now that's been in the war and very violent war. You can't put a price tag on what they've seen and done and that's changed their life forever. There's not a price tag for it. But yet sometimes they get overlooked as number one, being a live human being that does have feelings and emotions, that is a person, that does have a rest of a life to try and
mhm.
survive, that does have a family to survive, to go be with and share with. I mean, not trying to downplay and saying, yeah, you do put money in. There's a lot of time and effort being an athlete, but there may become a time when you say, hey, stop. You need to protect that athlete. Hey, stop, protect that soldier. A lot of these military guys that I talk to, they go out for the day, they get in a firefight, things happen, they get on in their vehicles, they're going down, different vehicles, trucks, Humvees, whatever. They're going down, IEDs go off, they blow up, their buddies are blowing up, they're losing their buddies. They're losing people every week. They come back and they slap them on the back. Hey, are you good? Are you good? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm good. Good, Sarge. Okay, head on back, get some chow. We'll do it again tomorrow. And they tell me this is all a conversation. It lasts less than a minute. There's not really that look into their eyes. There's nobody checking their pulse and their blood pressure. Nobody sitting down, and the supervisor isn't going to have dinner with them and see how they act. These guys and my buddies and the people that I talk to, they go back, and then all of a sudden they're sitting in the corner of the barracks. People go to chow, and I'll be right there, and all of a sudden they're sitting there by themselves with a gun in their mouth, or gun at their head, and they're shaking, and then they put it down, change clothes, and then they go eat, and nobody knows the difference. Nobody knows that they were sitting there contemplating something terrible for 5 minutes, maybe grabbed a beer that was in a refrigerator or a locker, and then went to eat, and then it's okay. A lot of that stuff is being missed.
I think one of the things that there's an emphasis there's an increased emphasis, and to the degree that it's effective, I mean, only time will tell. Um, but for example, in the Army, it's the H2F, their holistic health and fitness, and there's an increased emphasis in working with military personnel to begin to think about them as tactical athletes. And so that has some relevance in terms of creating readiness and all this other stuff. But part of what it does is if we were to start to think about, well, we do in this model, we think about law enforcement and corrections and other first responders, military. We think about them as tactical athletes. And now, if we're going to treat you like an athlete, here's something that I would say is that it's post traumatic stress, trauma. Sometimes that could be a single traumatic event. But a lot of times,
Mhm.
what happens is it's more like chopping down a tree. A lot of PTSD is more like chopping down a tree, and it's 100 chops to fell that tree. And so in if we're thinking about athletes, we would think about it in terms of load management. And load management says that if you're it's football season now, that you just the Kansas City Chiefs watched the game the other night, but they might only have Patrick Mahomes throw the ball 40 times or 35 times, or a running back takes 22 snaps, and so they're managing their load, and by managing their load, they're helping to optimize performance. Well, that's part of the concept, though. If that was introduced to into other tactical athletes, now we've got a model that doesn't say, okay, well, you're weak-willed if you don't hang in there. What we're saying is, Steve, you know what? In order for you to be at your best and to perform at the highest level for your own good and the good of society, then we need, you know, we've got a load on you, and so we're only going to let you do this, and then we're going to. So now we that rest or that talking to a counselor or whatever, that becomes part of the recovery process, just like drinking a protein shake, or just like getting a good night's sleep, or taking vitamins. Those things all become part of the recovery process now, to help to both monitor and manage the load that you're describing, that you've worked through for 3 decades plus. And there was no load management. It was just heavy every day. And that's some of the things that we learned is that we can't treat people that way and expect people to keep wanting to do the job.
No, no. But then, with management, there's pressures on performance and
Mhm.
statistics and et
Yeah,
cetera, et cetera.
those bean counters. I say that sometimes with affection, not this time.
Yeah, not this time. Yeah.
This time is
Does
with a
your
degree of contempt,
Can you
a
see
large degree.
comments? Do you see any comments?
No,
Do you see me?
I can see you. Yes.
Do you have
Oh,
any
now I
camera?
see. I do see a few comments now.
Did your camera button disappear?
Can you see me?
No,
You can't.
no.
Oh, that's interesting because now I'm live back to me again. I thought you could see me because I could see me and I'm talking. Um, hmm,
But we
I'm
got a
live.
big thunder and lightning storm going on out here. I wonder if something happened like that. I'm afraid to push too many buttons. You might,
Right, right.
I'll lose
Otherwise,
you.
I'll have to talk to you next week.
Yeah, but for the first 54 minutes, people saw you, so they know
Okay.
what you look like. They know who you are.
My camera button. Yeah, I'm not sure how to fix that. I'm just gonna
Yeah,
say that's somewhere in between us.
somewhere in between us. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
somewhere in the connection or something.
when I get through with
I'm
this,
gonna blame YouTube.
when we finish tonight, I'm going to send this link to a certain second lieutenant that we both know, so that he can kind of hear the both of us talking about this type of subject as this somebody is beginning their career in the military.
Hmm. Yeah.
Something to think about, because I know the training that he's going to go through. Back when I started in the military, it was always, you're brainwashed, you're brainwashed. And the funny thing is I saw how they were doing it to brainwash people. And I always joke with people that I also learned how to brainwash people. I have been on two SWAT teams and two special teams in a prison. So I am definitely an alpha male who thrives on banging my head against the wall, besides lifting weights and running fast and swimming and fast everything else. But I've also trained people to become an alpha male. So I know he's going to get a bunch of training and manuals. You got to go this way and go that way. But there's a little part of him that when he's driving somewhere, to sit back and listen to us talk, because he knows both of us, and the two opposites of careers, to realize, that there's got to be common sense in the military, and there's got to be some balance that's off paper.
Mhm.
And there is discretion in problem solving for the officers in the military, some, but not a lot. And this is the tricky part for him, is to figure out at what point can he use personal discretion over military protocol.
Mhm.
So maybe he'll find some point in this, very interesting, and you know. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I don't know if he knows about this podcast yet, the painting for PTSD,
Hmm.
which now we're at the hour mark. This would be a great disclaimer time for this great, lovely shirt here. I did post a link, um, and I can put it on here again. I do have an apparel store that says that short sleeve. This is a regular t-shirt material, but it's long sleeve, getting to be fall. I've got hats, and I also have some merch that says "The Beast," Sergeant Larson. For those of you that want to rock around and let everybody else know that you're a beast also. And I have a group on Facebook called The Beast, and it was designed not for people that are alpha males, but also for people that have survived cancer, that have survived trauma, assaults, car wrecks, being kidnapped, being anything that would require you to do out of the ordinary to save your life or to save another life. Weston Campbell, hello, thanks for joining, Weston. And the link is on here. It's called a Sergeant Beast Apparel. Got some nice hats, different colors, multicolors, hoodies. So it's t-shirts, long sleeves, sweatshirts, and then full hoodies and ball caps. And I'm looking to add a couple new designs besides this PTSD. Going to add a polo things. I'm got to get up. He's been real busy. He and you'll know what I'm saying. He picked up a real big account for Highland Heights High School for all of their athletic clubs, which they all have. Yeah, there we go. I can see you again.
Okay, I just had to go and come back.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah, Highland Heights. He's got a hat there too. Yep, he's got that. We're gonna get
it's a
so
it's a
when he
good
gets a
looking
chance
hat.
to sit
It,
down with me, we're gonna work on this polo thing. And but he just got two big high school accounts, and he's been overloaded because he's got to make money like any other small business. So for me, it's really confusing. I've not looked for people that's had PTSD, but I've had people come to me that and tell me that they have it. And I've got coworkers. The police guys would never admit it, but the people that work in corrections, because they didn't have the longer training, and we had the benefit of 40 hours of mental health training where they explained some things a little bit better. And this was back in the 90s. Now they want to put a counselor out there with a policeman and go solve problems. That's a mistake. But it's so my friends are like, hey, I became alcoholic, I became a drug addict while I worked in a prison because of this, and this is what I'm doing now. So they've already told me they've realized it, acknowledged it, they had a bad problem, and they've already overcome it. One of my friends became an ordained minister, and I think he's preaching in a small church, or he's one of a couple pastors that takes turns there. But he had a problem with the war. He got into bad drugs and working at the prison out of control. And he'd wake up choking his wife, everything she left him. He ended up about 9 months in two different rehab centers. I'm going to have him as a guest in the next couple months. We've been talking to him more lately. And he just, it took him that long to get over the addiction to alcohol and drugs and to get help. And he said, war was hell. Simple as that. You can't explain and describe it. You can't unsee it. You can't unlive it. It doesn't go away. And he falls under the nightmare insomnia category, extreme. I don't have nightmares. Everything happens to me psychedelically is when I'm awake in the daytime, which is not good because that's when I'm thinking, or I think I'm thinking. But so it's there's some things I'm going to leave off so that will be a next discussion to keep going with. But it I always tell people it's hard to admit and say it out loud. And I wear these shirts all the time and tell people, hey, yes, I have PTSD. I'm not going crazy in Walmart today. I have PTSD. I have some triggers. I have some things. It does cause some issues. I have a wife and children and grandchildren. And by the way, I'm allowed to tell you this now. As a brother and also Dr. Chip over here, I am expecting grandbaby number 5 from my middle daughter, the one that's
Congratulations.
here. That thank you. That they're buying a house. She's 12 weeks. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody until last week or 10 days ago, but it's been over 10 days between these two podcasts. So I just waited so I would just tell you here. That way I could see your facial expression. So, and the beauty of it is because this is the middle child that, and you're the oldest and I'm 2 years, and then our sister's 4 years younger than me. And my kids, my between my two girls, because of a car wreck, are almost 9 years apart, 8.5. So this middle child, she has been sick and puking for 12 weeks. And it's kind of like karma. I was like, all those times you talk back to me, this is what you get. I told you it would happen to you. You get pregnant, you're going to be a puker. Well, lo and behold, my wife didn't puke for any of the 3 kids, no morning sickness. My oldest daughter, a little bit, a couple times, but it didn't last a long time, over it really quick, maybe 2 weeks. Nope. She's still really nauseous, but she's like 12 weeks of growing up. And I kind of finally feel bad for her, probably just this week. The first 12 weeks I didn't.
Yeah.
But, life just is kind of like comes full circle. I said, this was a bad joke I heard, and nothing, because I had this vehicle before, but why did they name Kia Kia? Because they couldn't put karma on the back of a car. But I did like my Kia van. It helped when I had 2 little ones. I could push buttons and everything opened all up. It served its purpose for 3 years, and we traded it in and didn't need a van anymore. Everybody goes through that van stage, and we got out of it as soon as we could. It's not as bad for us as men, but for women, for some reason, they don't want to be stereotyped, and it just really downplays their persona to be a van soccer mom. A lot of them don't want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I inherited the Susan's van when she got to that phase. I just treated it like a pickup truck.
Yeah.
With I just threw stuff in the back, hauled it around. I wasn't that cool anywhere, so it didn't really affect my image.
Put seats down. I always did that.
Yeah.
I always, when we bought something,
Yeah.
it would go to her, and then
That's it.
I would just take the other.
That's
Didn't
it.
matter to me.
Seems like that's our job, huh? Then I would just drive it till it wouldn't work anymore. That's my favorite kind of car, though, one that's paid off.
Yeah.
Or a motorcycle. But that's a different story.
Yeah. But I think, this football player, and I didn't get to read anything. We've been a lot of doctors and some things, and I'll have to talk to you off of the air about this. Beyond my neck surgery.
Mm-hmm.
But, the Detroit Lions player got hurt 2 days ago. I haven't heard much more. Don't know what type of injury it was. Back, neck, head, concussion, trauma, whatever, or rung his bell. I don't know the details. Well, we'll look into that a little bit more. But I showed this to Dad when I saw him last week. I went out and talked to him, and I'm going to make a short video that I'm going to put out here in a couple of days. But it's a list. I think I counted 18 pro football players that have died from CTE. And it has their name, their team. I think it has their position and their birth year and the year of their death. And he looks at the names. He's like, oh, I know this one. I know that one. I know this one. I know that one. Most of them were the older cats, but there's a whole lot of newer ones. And there's some guys that are born like 85 and 88 that have already died and have been diagnosed with CTE. So I'll do that and I'll tag you so you'll see that list of names to think about. I've got a few wrestlers, some MMA people, the contact sport. And here's the odd thing, and I didn't mention this. I failed this due to my short-term memory loss. When we discussed about me having a lot of concussions, you played football, I didn't. You played baseball and you were a catcher. It wasn't sports. Mine came from being in the military and law enforcement and fighting. So mine were combative training injuries.
Hmm.
Now, when I'm on a job, I don't let you hit me. I am the number one blocker because nobody's hit me in any of my fights. I'm a great blocker, and I teach blocking before I teach striking, which is normal. Block and strike fast and hard, and I'm really fast and strike really hard. But mine were training blows, and I would wear a padded helmet like the Red Man suit, like you see on TV, look like the Pillsbury Doughboy. So I did have cushion padding, MMA type padding, boxing helmet padding on, and still getting blows like this, with the exception of a few times I fell on my head off of objects and things that I shouldn't have fallen off of and landed on my head, and I did. Weston, well, yeah, we debated that a little bit before. He made the comment the NFL doesn't care about traumatic brain injuries. They've made some steps, they've made some changes, and I know they've talked about it a lot. You and I have talked about it a lot,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, at least for 5 years, if not more.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big fan. If I watch the Super Bowl 20 minutes and that's it, 20 minutes of a year, I'm lucky. I'm usually more like 5 minutes and that's it. Highlights.
Hmm.
I'll take a highlight reel of the Super Bowl and that's it, and I'm done. But we had opposite sports. We both were in weightlifting, but you don't bang your head on stuff in weightlifting. You're not supposed to. Now me, I hit my head on the wall just like I would hit my head on a cell door in a glass that you're not supposed to. But I did use the smelling salts, but I only used them when I was in a powerlifting meet, like before a bench or a deadlift. I didn't do it when I squatted because I didn't want to do that and have weight over top of me and have it crush me. Just in case something went wrong or had too much oxygen in my brain. I don't want to be
Right.
underneath the weight. I wanted
Right.
to be, where I was better control. Well, you're benching, you're kind of under it, but it's different. You got 4 spotters there. But I know the smelling salt feeling. I know that tingling. And then I watch these guys, and I've watched, the Beast Eddie Hall and Hapthor Bjornsson, and they're just like freaking eating a whole steak with that thing underneath their
Hmm.
nose, and then they go lift. I'm thinking, I wonder if I can hold my breath as long as they're smelling that salt. That's got to be bad for you to do that for 30 seconds. That's got to be too
Yes.
much tingly in the brain. And I've seen the power lifters that their nose and their ears start bleeding.
Yeah.
Pujanowski, I've seen him rupture before in the World's Strongest Man. That's got to cause some long term. Here's the bad thing about us
Yeah.
getting older, is because some of the stuff that you've sent to me talks about it may take 10, 20 years, 25 years before things manifest with
Yes.
CTE related symptoms, we'll say it that way. Post-traumatic stress can become immediate the next day. It could become later, but
Yeah.
this concussion can sneak up on you. And I was telling my wife today, come back from a doctor, I'm like, honey, some of these things caused me a problem. Happened to me like 20 years ago when I got whacked in the head. I
Yeah.
retired from police in 2008. I did a boxing match. I was training in 2003. That's a long time ago, with a 17-year-old that was training for the Olympics. And he hit me in the side of the head and everything went numb and I couldn't hear for a week. And I had clear fluid coming out of my ear. From then all of a sudden my ear popped and I was back and everything was okay.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I guess that's giving me a problem right now.
Yeah.
And it's like all of a sudden just really, really getting out. But if we I'll text you. My surgery is for my neck is next Wednesday the 20th. I gotta be there at 6. It's 7:30 in the morning, and a couple hours, and then it's outpatient. They'll watch me for a bit and then send me home with a brace on. So when I get to a cognitive state, I may text you when I get my head going. Oh, she's hi. I'm a keep it real. She said the guy on the left is the best listener. I guess referring to you because I'm talking too much. Anyhow, when I get a bit abilities
That's
to
funny.
I get the ability to send you a message, I might try and give you a call, or if you've got time, maybe I'll just send you a link and we'll do a quick 10-minute live
Yeah,
just
just
so that
keeping
we
it
can
real. Yeah.
chat and say, hey, I went through the
Yeah,
surgery doing this, hey, all my brain stuff has went away or it's worse or whatever, but just give you, hey, we could do that live.
yeah,
We don't have any
yeah.
weapons involved in this podcast, so we
We
can
could do
do that, talk
that.
about this live. But yeah, it's nice sometimes, seeing face to face. I'll hit dad up on Messenger and he'll be like hitting all the buttons on the phone, and be like, "Did you call me?"
Right.
Being 82, but he's been on Messenger with me
Right.
before, so
Yeah,
he'll get on there and I'll call him, let him make sure see that I'm okay.
yeah.
But we'll kind of do that. But there's just so much more to talk about, and I'm gonna kind of I'll check mark some things that we talked about and some things that we missed. I'll put on the other side and a different kind of design than a check mark. Something I can hopefully I remember next week or the next podcast time, and to keep doing this. My goal is to get people, and for Weston and I'm gonna keep it real that are on here now. The reason I'm sitting on my bed is because this is not a clinical, even though he is Dr. Chip with a PhD and professor, and degree and a lot of experience in counseling and doing therapy. This is not for you to dial in and be therapy. This is us in a relaxed kind of a private setting for people to listen and to hear, and no pressure. Nobody else is going to know. But PTSD affects a lot of people. Emory, the CDC, the guy shot 200 rounds plus down there because he said he got sick from COVID. So he went there. Why did the guy go to the NFL to shoot? Because he says, study my brain, and then he commits suicide. And that's what's wrote on his note, study my brain. And he was having mental issues and had notes saying that he had symptoms related to the brain damage of CTE, and he wanted his brain to be studied. People out here are crying for help. So this is an avenue for people to get unofficial help. And when they get to the point that they need to go to counseling and need to get help, then absolutely we would tell them to go. We don't want anybody, at home trying to harm themselves in any way. But we want you to realize, hey, something's wrong. Maybe listen and pick up on a couple clues, couple triggers, couple things that you notice in yourself that become different and wrong. And then as you listen to us brothers talking about things, and say maybe I need to talk to somebody, or I keep listening, or maybe I need to read about it. You get on your phone and start typing in about PTSD, and you can read for hours and read, and just privacy of your own home. Doesn't cost you anything. The one thing that I feel, one of the many things that we're lacking in this country is mental health care, especially for those under the age of 18. But it's not affordable, and it's insurance won't cover. It's this, you got insurance, you pay for this, and you can't get it. And it becomes an issue for people. And then I don't have time. I'm too busy. I'm not. You're never too busy to try and help yourself. You can listen to this, and I do have a playlist on my YouTube channel, Sergeant Beast Larson, that all of the PTSD podcasts are together. And you can just play them in your car while you're going to work. Just play and listen. Sometimes just having reassurance from somebody will help you to get through the day when you're struggling with mental health issues. I've not professionally counseled anybody because I'm not licensed. But as a policeman, I've talked people into giving me the gun, put the knife down, to let go of their wife or girlfriend that's been a hostage, to not jump off the bridge. I've been in those situations, and I've been successful in that. And that's kind of all this accumulative that gets me here. And then to have him come on and add the whole professional side to my amateur side of caring about people and helping people. I guess, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. That actually gives me an idea. We'll talk about it off but some of these discussions are uh, how would I say, heavy. I mean, this is not a light or fluffy marshmallow
It
like topic or conversation.
it
And sometimes even people with PTSD need marshmallows and a soft landing spot or some reinforcement. So that's giving me an idea. I'll run it by you later.
okay.
Um,
And the
yeah,
proof of that is
yeah.
last week I was live talking about protesters on the Cincinnati Bridge and the police officer, and they're making a big deal because he was punching a guy that was resisting arrest.
Hmm.
And they're like, he's got 2 prior lawsuits for the officer for excessive force. Okay, the guy's resisting arrest. The police are surrounded, outnumbered like 199
Hmm.
to 6. You're allowed to escalate force, shut the hell up, basically. But you know what? In 10 minutes, I had 1,200 people on a live video. But when I
Hmm.
said we're going to talk about PTSD right
Yeah.
now, looking up, there's 4 people on here right now
Mhm.
because people don't want to face this tough topic of PTSD. I've been kicked off TikTok live several times talking about PTSD, just saying those 4 letters. I
Well, there
violated their
you just did
policy
it. You just
and they
did it
blasted.
here, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I get blasted off.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get some more ideas.
Mhm.
I go see the hand doctor Friday, and I don't know if he can do them both, but I got to have trigger finger done on probably these 4 fingers on both hands. I can't even cycle my Glock to take the round out of the chamber. I can't even put a magazine back in and extract it because I can't squeeze it because the compression of my nerves is affecting down my arms and my hands. They're tingling so bad. So I get this neck done, and then as soon as possible, I'm going to have this hand surgeries done. And then in the meantime of that, the doctors will be working on the noggin, what's inside there. All those warm and fuzzy things, box of rocks, all those things that we refer
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Then we'll go to that. So I want to thank everybody. We're going to jump off here. We've been on for about an hour, 20 minutes. Thanks to everybody that's came on. And if you're just coming on now, go back and play it back. You've got to listen to what we're talking about PTSD and raising awareness and helping people to realize and understand what's going on. You know, how to self-diagnose, how to listen to your wife. You know, I've listened to everything my wife has told me, but the one thing I did not act upon correctly was to realize and admit that I had PTSD. It's not my only fault, but that's the only thing I didn't listen to her about. Everything else, she was correct.
Yeah,
That's why I've
in
been married
time,
30 years.
some things take longer to
Yeah,
acknowledge.
but but it's there. And you know, one day, and I'll close with this statement. You know, those Kelsey brothers, I said this before, they're just a bunch of entitled, overpaid athletes, and we clean the sidewalk up with their face. Oh, see, that's the aggressive
So,
part of me coming out.
so you've heard Jason Kelsey talking about that he's already showing signs of CTE.
I did not. I'm gonna have to do some
Yeah.
research on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that actually kind of factored into his retirement, among some other things. Wanted as an offensive lineman, but the offensive lineman in the NFL, because they have so much contact. So you're talking about like the big traumas with concussions, but offensive linemen have these 4 yards, 2 yards, 4 feet, 2 feet, but they had this constant pounding in practice and throughout the
Yeah.
games. Um, and so they're more likely to have it among NFL players. Uh,
Now, is he the older one that
yeah.
already retired?
Yes.
He's not the Taylor Swift fling of the
No.
week
No.
because I can't. Okay. Well, we'll have to do some research, and maybe I'll have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe
But
we'll
he's
have
he
to
talked about
invite
that.
him onto the
Mhm.
show.
Mhm.
A highlight for those on here. I'm gonna keep it real and Western, just to let Weston Campbell let you know. I made a video last week, and I mentioned about CTE, and the next morning I was contacted by Gerald Visker. Gerald Visker, in the Super Bowl in 1980, I believe, 81, San Francisco 49ers, got a severe concussion. And like Chip said, the smelling salts got him through that. He just published a book that outlines his 38-year fight against the NFL for a workers' comp claim because of his concussion. So Chip and I have talked about this, about reaching out to him and maybe have him as a guest. So if we could get him and get one of the old Kelsey brother, maybe the one with the most sense, because he's using his brain, not his heart. Maybe we could get him to come and get on the show or talk, or invite us to be on his show, and we can tell the world about our show, and then we can all talk, the four of us. The two of us educated ones, and then the two of us, of those over there. The NFL dudes, and probably their mom will be sitting there because she goes everywhere that he goes. That was a slam there. Anyhow, you just never know. We could replace the Kelsey brothers one day on the 9 a.m. show. I don't know if that would fit in your teaching schedule, but it's good on my schedule.
Yeah. We can work it out.
We'll work it out. All right. I'll message you tomorrow, and we'll think about your idea, and then we'll talk some more.
All right. Very good.
Later this weekend, we'll get the next plan going.
Okay.
Thanks for being here with me again, Chip. It's always nice.
All right. Hey, thanks for the invitation, Steve. Always good talking with you.
I was not that long of a beard before I shaved tonight. I just can't do that. And also I'm pre-surgery prepping. I'm allowed to keep a goatee, but that's it.
Yep.
It'll be good.
We'll talk to you before the surgery, but
yeah. All right, everybody. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss as we keep going and talking about the Kelsey brothers, who might give me PTSD sometimes as well. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.